Hey, hello, and welcome to this episode of Bloodhound Pix. If it's connected to January or not, we'll find out. Um, but we are doing something a little bit different than normally, where we will be releasing these episodes once a month instead of once a week, except for all of our Horror Not Fear campaign content that will still be released in its own episode. But we are still giving you all the same amount of content and the same variety that you've known. It's just now you get it all in one big drop instead of weekly. That should be a lot better for everybody. Also, if you go onto TeePublic, onto any of our social media sites, stuff like that, you can pick up Bloodhound Pix merchandise. Like right now, I am drinking because I drank too much tea this morning, black tea, so I'm hyped up on caffeine. So I am drinking water out of the Bloodhound Pix coffee mug. And I also am wearing, in case you want to see, Bloodhound Pix, our Pride shirt. It is our logo with, rainbow flag and all of that. And I believe Josh is also wearing a Bloodhound Pix shirt, but there are tons of varieties of content that you can pick up.
Josh is not.
Oh, okay. So it's just me. And I also have a tote bag.
But Josh
well.
has Bloodhound
There you go.
Pix merch.
Oh.
So
I have a laptop case.
There we go.
There we
nice.
go.
Okay. So, as always, I am one of your hosts, Craig.
I'm Kyle.
And this is Josh.
And we are joined again by our special guest, Dan Johnson. And so, Dan, if you want to introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Dan. I am a theater person. I love art, film, horror. Craig and I go a very long way back. And you get wound up by black tea, bless.
Yeah, I don't drink coffee, and I never have. So I like, and that's
No, not for you.
No.
Craig knows I don't have a problem with energy drinks. I'm drinking one right
Yeah.
now. I can stop at any time.
Okay. Okay. So this little bit, we are doing our screener spotlight, where we were talking about 3 films that we received. We are starting with the Korean crime thriller Beasts Clawing at Straws.
Try again, Craig.
Then we are moving on to The Last Man, which is just getting its release, but is what came from 2011, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And then ending on the New Zealand kind of paranormal slacker comedy Dead, which just came out, I believe, in October. Oh, Josh and I both watched Beasts Clawing at Straws. So I'll give the little synopsis and we'll go into that. So the movie itself kind of follows, in a way, it is an ensemble piece in a way, but it follows 3 kind of main storylines about, there's a janitor, there's a businessman, and then there is, I forgot the name, maybe one of you can help me. It's not Call Girl, but it's in Korea where an establishment has women who will act as
hostesses.
Yeah, where they'll be like companions to the people, the patrons. So she's in there, and all 3 of them need money in some way, and one of them they don't know each other that we know initially, but one of them finds a big bag of cash, and then what proceeds is kind of a big, twists and turns and double crossing and people trying to get a hold of this big bag of cash. Now, Josh, you want to go with your thoughts on this movie?
Sure. So this movie was, it was entertaining, but it was, it really likes the kind of stereotypical Tarantino stuff, which, that used to be cool. now it just kind of sticks out like a sore thumb. I mean, it wasn't necessarily problematic for me just because the script was at least I liked the script.
Mhm.
It had a lot of shit in there I did not see coming. And it seemed to do it pretty regularly too. Just real offbeat kind of story choices that were a lot of it was fucking funny too,
Yeah.
which it was like a warped kind of sense of funny. So again, that sort of, is more Tarantino-ish stuff, but it was strange too because I think, Craig, I told you too that for being a Korean film, it seems very American.
Yeah, we talked about that before.
Yeah, I don't know. That's kind of a strange thing, but it really seemed like all the actors and whatever were Korean, but it seemed like a very, very American type thing. I think I don't know, that's kind of weird, but yeah, I mean it was entertaining, and like I said, the script had a lot of crazy shit. So I mean, that's much better than being boring. And a lot of it was dialogue too. There wasn't a lot of action of any kind. So other than people being murdered, and a lot of it happened off screen too. So yeah, I enjoyed it. It's got a really stupid name, but that's okay.
I mean, I would agree. Even with the American sentiment, it really does feel like with the Tarantino or those type of films that we've seen countless times now, where it's the three kind of people. There it is. There's a ton of other characters, but you're really watching these kind of three stories that are intertwining. And I did like it. It is broken up in chapters as well, doing that whole.
Oh yeah,
idea.
more Tarantino stuff.
Yeah, but within the first chapter, it does give you each character, and it really, each one of them they're either in debt because there was a scam, or what. One of them was the guy's ex-girlfriend took all of his money, and then the guy who initially finds the bag of cash, I believe it's his daughter or somebody, needs money for college, or
Yeah.
And so they both all three of them have some legitimate reason why they need the cash, and it really allows for the building of this and introducing these characters, which I thought was great in that sense. But yeah, I thought there was some great kind of twists and turns. There's comedy to it. It is, I guess, going back, once you've seen one of those movies or seen a bunch of those movies, you kind of, despite all the twists and turns, you're going to feel like you're watching just another one of those films. I don't know if it doesn't really bring any sort of huge depth to it, in my opinion. I don't think I would rewatch it again, but it was a fun watch and entertaining for what it was, I would say.
Yeah, I agree completely. I'll never watch it again, but yeah, it was like I said, it was entertaining enough, and if you can kind of get over the just blatant Tarantino stuff, yeah, you'll be fine with it. Another thing too, I was going to mention, the script too is out of sequence.
Mhm.
So let's just keep piling on the Tarantinoisms. But it was part of the charm of it though, for me too. Just again, it was more interesting structured the way it was than if it would have just been straight chronological. So I mean, at the very least, the dude did what was necessary to not make it boring, especially considering there was no action, just a lot of dialogue and off-screen murder.
Okay, so next up we are talking about The Last Man, starring Andy Nyman, who I'm a big fan of, and so I was excited about this movie. And Nev Campbell is in it as well. as his British wife. We'll get into that, I'm assuming. But no, Andy Nyman, I think he's one of those actors that there's always that phrase of an actor's actor, where I don't think he's known as well by a general audience, but he is in a ton of stuff. And for horror audiences, he's the one who co-wrote and then starred in the stage play Ghost Stories, which then became the movie Ghost Stories. And then he was also on the miniseries as the kind of sleazy producer Dead Set. I think it's called Dead Set, right? The zombie miniseries about people trapped in a Big Brother reality show complex, and there's zombies outside. And he does a great job on that. And he's kind of popped up in all these genre pieces because he's a big fan of it. But then, yeah, I think more generally he's known as kind of some weird comedic character type of thing. The story itself is about a man who was recently just fired from his kind of big corporate job, and his life has been going worse and worse, and he's basically bankrupt, and he's trying to keep everything in order and trying not to let his wife know, played by Neve Campbell, that has no money. And as things are going worse, he comes across, or this man visits him, saying that his old friend who owed him money his old friend Tom, who owed him money, now is dead. And so Martin's the one, played by Andy Nyman, who has to pay Tom's debt. And so since he doesn't have this money, he says, well, you can come with me and do these jobs with me for a night, and then we'll call it even. And then we kind of go into the story of them over the course of this night. And there's a big twist. I don't know if we should reveal. It's one of those twists that it happens midway through. So I think it's okay to reveal it.
We kind of have to reveal it.
Yeah, if we're going to talk about it. But sorry, Dan, that we're going to be revealing the twist. Okay. But yeah, so who wants to talk first about this movie? Kyle?
Sure. I'm glad there was a twist. I found it to be just very not that it shouldn't be serious, since it's about a guy who's in serious debt and his whole life is like about to fall apart, but it just felt very like it was taking itself very seriously. It was very dry for the first, before the debt collector shows up, for the first half an hour. It was just kind of difficult to get through. And then it got more interesting with the debt collector, and then obviously when the twist comes in, it recontextualizes everything, because then you have to question what was real or not. But it still didn't quite, for me, I don't know if it saved the movie, because it still didn't necessarily go anywhere with the fact that he was kind of out of his mind.
So the twist, we'll spoil it now so then we can have Dan join back on, is that, I guess, skip ahead 10 seconds if we'll probably mention again, but that it's all in his head. Well, the debt collector is in his head, and he's basically having a nervous breakdown, or some form of a breakdown, I guess. And yeah, okay. So Dan, if you want to rejoin us.
I don't know if he can hear you.
Oh. I don't know how to put. Okay. There we go. Okay. Josh, if you want to go next.
I'm out of these three movies, I'm really glad I watched this one last, because it was by far and away the best of the three. About the only thing I can really complain about The Glass Man is that for some fucked up reason, it sat on a shelf for 9 years or something like that, which is very odd, especially considering it has Neve Campbell in it. She doesn't really have that big a part, but still, I mean, fuck. And it needed about 15 minutes cut out of it.
Yes.
but you know, it's minor bitching. Like I said, it all plays out in this way where, you know, they set up this guy, the Andy Neiman character, and it just rains shit on him for the first 15, 20, 30 minutes of this movie. It's like one bad thing after another, after another, after another, after another, to the point where it's almost ridiculous.
Well, even I'll say even the way he responds to some of the stuff, it's like, no, I'll get to that more on my thing, but no human would actually respond to, I don't know, the way he is. Like he's very naive to, like, the fact, like, a mugger and all this stuff that it just didn't make sense. Yeah,
that's true. So that's how it plays out for the first half hour maybe, and then shortly after, the debt guy, this big fucking scary burly ass, you know, obviously like career criminal guy, shows up out of nowhere, and you know, then they go on their escapade for the evening, doing whatever the fuck this guy wants him to do. And then when the sort of twist occurs in the script, I fucking laughed really loud and long when it happened, because I seriously was like, is that fucking real? That like came out of nowhere, and it really does make you go back and think really hard about what you've seen all the way up to that point, which I didn't really care about or think about before that part happened. So it was effective in that way. Not, you know, not just for the fact that it was like just completely out of nowhere, and one of those things where, you know, a lot of times this isn't the first film that's ever done something like this, right? I mean, not even close. And you know, when it happens and you go back and you think about what you've seen in a completely different way, you also realize that there's no way you could have figured this out on your own. Mm-hmm. That always kind of bugs me about shit like that. But yeah, I thought when it happens in the movie, it comes at a part too that's really long and drawn out and boring that could have been cut. So, you know, it was the best possible moment for it, and yeah, to me, it really forced you then to go back and think about everything you had seen, because it should all come out, you know, in this sort of different light than it did initially. So I like I said, I thought it was easily the best of the three films, and I'm glad that I saw it last. So, and go ahead.
Oh no, you can finish your thought.
I was just gonna get into the Neve Campbell and her fucking accent, because that damn near fucking ruined it.
Yeah,
because that was like, oh my goodness, that was so ridiculous, and it was like, just let her be American. We all know who she is. Fuck, man.
Yeah,
and it didn't play into the plot in any sort of way. Like, she could have just been an American wife. Because that's all she is, basically. Yeah. Is just wife of the main character. She doesn't really have any. So I started, and again, as I was saying, I'm a big fan of the main actors. But yeah, the first bit, it really drags on. I think there's this whole issue. He was fired, and but it doesn't really get fully into it, but that he was potentially fired because the company that he's been working with for years and years was going to do something shady with a business deal, and he didn't want to do it. And so they fired him, and then they gave him a horrible recommendation letter. And this is while everything else is falling on him. And he tries to talk to people, and they won't talk to him, all this stuff. I thought more of those instances would pop up later on in the script, but basically a lot of these the crap that's being thrown at him is then kind of pushed off to the side. for this night. Really, none of it's returned to and stuff like that. Which was a little bit of an issue for me of, you dump us with 30 minutes of like all this information, all this ambiguity, but then never really address it later on. But then what is it? So there's the mugger issue where he just gives the guy his watch and says, okay, then I guess I'll meet you at 2 tomorrow. And then he gets his wife, Neve Campbell, she gets a message from the HR rep from the company and then assumes that Martin is having an affair because the message is kind of very, it's ambiguous. However, the message is then played, and I've never had an affair. I've never been in a relationship like that, or dealt with an affair. But, listening to that message, I was like, that sounds nothing like another woman calling about them having an affair. Like, yeah, it sounds ambiguous. It sounds ominous, but it sounds like something work related. It doesn't sound anything like an affair.
Not only that, but why, if they were having an affair,
would she call the house?
Yeah, why the fuck would she call and leave a fucking message?
Well, and why?
I mean, no one's that fucking stupid.
Why wouldn't he have like a? Because he basically doesn't want to discuss why she's calling because he's lost his job and she works there.
Yes.
And that's what it's actually about. But why wouldn't you be able to come up with some kind of? Because he has like no excuse. He just goes like, he kind of just clams up, and you're like, you could have lied in some way that would. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, it was very awkward. It was awkward on his part. It was awkward on Neve Campbell's part too, because again, it's like, dude, if he was having an affair and he was having sex with this woman that just called, why the fuck would she call the house that she knows you live in?
Well, and it makes it clear that
he's got a cell phone.
Yeah, he's been working at this company his whole adult life, he says, basically. Right. And so obviously this employee would know that he's married, and I don't know. There were a lot of issues like that I had that just didn't make sense for this in terms of scripting, in terms of dialogue and reactions. I think that was my big issue, is that a lot of the reactions didn't really fit at all.
Yeah, it was like they were forcing them. They needed her to go against it. You know what I mean? It was like a forced result that didn't really work.
Yeah. But no, besides that, I think the acting is really well. I think, as Josh said, I know as Kyle has kind of mentioned, it could have done by cutting a good 15 minutes out of it. Does anybody else have any more on The Last Man? Okay. So we'll get into the final one, which all four of us have joined in, so Dan can join us back. It is Dead. And so the story is about, in New Zealand, an officer is murdered, and he wakes up, I guess, as a ghost, and he finds, as you would, because he can't wake up, he wakes up dead, and he finds this kind of pothead slacker who spends his day, who can see ghosts with this special drug that he makes. He can see these ghosts, and he spends his days trying to help people and kind of helping people cross over to the other side. And his whole thing is, well, I can give you my insurance money, which the guy really needs. Marbles is what he's called. I can give you my insurance money if you help me solve this case. And they go off on this whole thing of trying to solve the case and why all of these men have been killed off. So the movie itself, I guess I'll just give mine. I actually I enjoyed it a lot. I think maybe because of the year that we're in, stuff like that, it's very genuine in a way. It's kind of lighthearted. And I normally am not a big fan of like the the slacker, the pothead, as it can be, teaming up with the strict officer or the strict person. We've seen this a ton of times, and it really plays by the book for the most part with a lot of things. But I think what really saved it for me is that he doesn't seem like if this was done in America, or in the United States or kind of North America, that he would be more comical and he would be more kind of useless, I think, or over the top with this character, where you kind of watch this and you see this guy who is struggling with his own issues of that his father passed away. He's been trying to hold on to that, and he also has this mother who is dealing with it in her own way as well, but is also kind of condescending to him and controlling. And I don't know, there's a nice kind of dynamic there that I enjoyed for the most part. And for me, the ending was a little rushed, where I felt like it could have added maybe 3 minutes or so, just a little bit more, because it seems like some of the characters kind of disappear and aren't fully returned to, stuff like that. And then but yeah, from going on, who would like to talk about first? You like to Dan?
Okay. Yeah, I'm glad that you mentioned the ending, because that's, if there was, I think, like one big problem I did sort of have with this movie, it's just like from the standpoint, it's like the movie got to its ending. Did it get there the best way, or did it get there in the clearest way? I would say sort of. Okay, I tend to hate comparing movies to movies, but this one is going to be inevitable. The Frighteners.
Mm-hmm.
Because in a lot of ways, this movie shares aspects with The Frighteners. The man who can see ghosts, and he makes it kind of his job, but he's got his own sort of torments. There's, a serial killer aspect. There is, literally the fact that it's made by New England filmmakers aspect, New Zealand filmmakers aspect. This movie isn't. It's neither as funny nor as scary.
Yeah.
But I could go along definitely with the nice aspect of it. And I think it's that sort of fundamental consideration and, I want to say, empathy that the movie has for a lot of its characters that I think makes it a lot better than it could have been, and I think helps it ultimately feel less derivative than, because, like you were saying, fish out of water. You got your stoner, and you got the straight-laced guy. Like, you can't say straight guy with this one. But I did ultimately enjoy it. It was again, gentle feel, like that's gentle. It was gentle.
No, I agree. And I would agree with I think that's going to be the problem with a lot of horror fans or comedy fans, is there's not enough scare, I think, to really be fun for horror fans, and there's not enough jokes in terms to be a really hilarious comedy. I mean, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No, The Frighteners is a good example, and I mean, The Frighteners I love it, and it's way better, but yeah.
Yeah. Oh, see the same with The Frighteners. And I think it's that sort of neither fish nor fowl aspect of it that may turn some people off. I think, again, it's more observational approach and its more human approach, in some ways sort of careful, in terms of looking at the traumas of these people, is what sets it apart, even if I can't necessarily say I laughed out loud at this movie. And it certainly wasn't a hugely terrifying movie. I will say as well, because this is lovely, queer representation in cinema is always something I'm an advocate for. Being a queer person myself, it's enjoyable to see those kinds of stories being told and engaged with. So that aspect I found very charming. I found that lovely.
And and I think having that character, the officer, be that, it's not like his journey of identifying with, like, it's there type of thing. I think that it doesn't make it as pandering or patronizing that it could be, even though there is a scene where they're in a gay bar and stuff like that. But that even, like, it's not done, I don't think, in a way like you would see in Cruising or one of those things. It's a lot more.
Well,
like,
but we were talking. We were talking about this with Death Ranch. This is what I mean when I talk about the centering of a perspective versus the absence of centering a perspective. Death Ranch is about Black people, but it's not really considering them. Dead has queer, gay main characters and is about them, and also considers their perspectives and experiences. And it's having that standpoint behind the camera, behind the lens, and behind the pen or the typewriter that makes all the difference.
So Kyle or Josh?
Yeah.
Which way?
Yeah, I liked it too. I mean, I feel like I agree with what the issues are with it, where it's like the strength is the fact that the characters aren't stereotypical, but the overall narrative and doesn't quite come together as much, and it's not as funny as you want it to be, and it's not horror enough to almost even be a horror comedy. So it's in this weird place where it's like got a lot of really good stuff in it, but it doesn't maybe work entirely. And it's like, how do you, I don't know how to sell anyone on seeing the movie.
Yeah.
Like, it's fun. The characters are good. It kind of doesn't necessarily go anywhere with it. But it's still really enjoyable, like really well acted and stuff.
Yeah. And I think that even the characters, they don't, they kind of put actors that wouldn't be, again, if you look at one made in the States, they're not like your traditional good-looking hero. They're just, stuff like that. They kind of have their unique looks to them.
Well,
which
that was
I always loved. Yeah,
that was the best part of the lead guy, who was great. Was he would never be, he wouldn't be like handsome enough or whatever bullshit in America for us to make a movie about that character. Yeah. But he's great. He totally could carry the movie.
Definitely. Josh, you've been nodding your head and.
Yeah, I guess my biggest takeaway from this movie is that the filmmakers really like The Frighteners. I mean, obviously, it's like a fucking remake. I don't think I like this movie near as much as you three. It wasn't funny. I literally did. I just had a straight face the entire time. It reminded me of somebody, and we were talking about how that the Korean film earlier, Beast Clawing at Straws, was Tarantino-ish. All this reminded me of was somebody trying to emulate like Edgar Wright.
Yeah.
I mean, that's all it reminded me of, is like, wow, this motherfucker loves The Frighteners, and they really like Edgar Wright's kind of like comedic style, at least in writing scripts.
I would have said it
specifically Dawn of the Dead, but Yeah,
I
I
was
just
gonna say
Yeah, go
that it feels like because all the eyes that are on New Zealand now with comedies, it felt like what we do in the shadows were influenced by. I know there's the
Yeah.
spin-off series and all that by I can't think of the director's name right now.
Taika Waititi.
Yes, yes. Or the other Jermaine Clement or all of them. Like it felt very New Zealand to me.
Yeah, I mean, for me that was just because the actors were New Zealanders, but otherwise just the style of the way like the jokes that weren't funny were written it just reminded me of Edgar Wright.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, to me, none of it really landed. And it was like trying really hard to be funny. I mean, because let's be honest, this is a comedy before it's anything else.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. It didn't really work for me. When it was over, I was like thankful, but I was also like, that movie was fine. I mean, that's about it. That's about the extent of my, it was like, yeah, it was fine. Except for the sort of resolution to the story was just like, huh? What the fuck are you? No. But well, that's not my decision to make. I just felt like it was the wrong decision. And it literally just came out of nowhere, and it was so just like muddy, and it didn't need to be, I didn't think either, but
it definitely felt like as I was saying, it needed probably 3 more minutes or something like that. It felt like there was more in the script for that ending, and then it was just cut out or something like that to fit time purposes, because there are these random gaps that are missing, I feel.
No, it's interesting. No, you're right when you said like you could definitely sort of feel Edgar Wright as an influence. I mean, because if you're going to do horror comedy, I imagine that Edgar Wright is a huge influence. I think one of the problems, and certainly Dead falls into this, is Edgar Wright's scripts appear loose. They appear easy. They're very approachable. They are structurally solid.
Yeah.
Like, actually go back and look at how he tells a story and how he puts that together from a script standpoint and also from a visual standpoint, which is, I think, the other component. This is why Edgar Wright is such a genius, is because he has such a unique and specific visual storytelling style that he backs up with his actual screenwriting. You could not say that all about Dead. You could not even remotely. I still liked it a little bit more than I expected. I would agree. Ultimately, I think it's fine. But it's like, oh, it's fine. I wouldn't say like it's fine. There you go. There's a glowing recommendation.
I think it's a good gateway movie for horror fan or people like where, I think I'd recommend it if somebody was to say, they have this happens a lot where like, oh, I have a partner or I have somebody that wants to watch a horror type movie, but they don't really like horror or stuff like that. Be like, oh, well, I mean, there's this movie called Dead. I'd recommend it in that sense, I feel. But besides that, I don't think, it probably wouldn't pop up for me to suggest.
See, that's interesting that you'd say that. Like, if I had someone come up to me like, oh, I like horror, but I don't know where to start. It's Human Centipede. There you go.
Yeah, I agree.
If you want to just dip a toe in.
Yeah. Okay. But so that is our chat about the 3 movies. We talked about The Last Man, beasts clawing at straws and dead. As always, thank you for listening. Thank you so much, Dan, for joining us for the second time. And we hope to bring you back and be able to have you chat more with us. And it's been a ton of fun. And always, like us, subscribe of that. And from here on out, we are releasing once a month and buy Bloodhound merchandise.
Now.
Yeah. Thank you for listening.
Bloodhound Pix podcast is part of the Morbidly Beautiful Podcast Network. Produced by Josh Lee, Craig Drum, and Kyle Hintz. Music by Raymond Seed. Editing by Kyle Hintz.